Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Max Vaneli, and I would like to welcome you to the first episode of the Millionaire Book Society. I'm really excited for this new journey that I'm launching. It's a bit overwhelming. It's been a long time since I wanted to start something like this, and I decided to just give it a go and start with an audio form podcast that I will be posting. And we will kind of take it from there. And before I dive into my personal journey, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the reasons why I am launching this podcast. Early on in my career, I was mainly focused on my music stuff and touring the world for the past probably 10 years of my life. And as I got older and just kind of getting more interested in the world of different topics, I started reading more books and started just getting more intrigued by different things outside of just the music industry. And then also another thing that I realized is that as I climbed the ladder of fame and success and money, there was just a missing void, and I couldn't really understand what that void was. And it always goes back to this concept of sort of emptiness and trying to understand what is it that what more can you ask from life. Life has given me so much already. An opportunity to tour the world with the music that I create. So, and I think that knowledge is that void. So I started reading a lot of books. I started really learning and falling in love with the educational aspect of things, and it just started fascinating me. Especially I think my early learnings kind of started from listening to Jordan Peterson that my mother actually put me on, and I initially was kind of not really that interested, but the more that I kind of dove into that, the more I fell in love with the idea of sort of understanding the mind and how things work. So this is the reason why I launched the Millionaire Book Society, for that reason, because I think that for the past 5 years, one of the most rewarding things for me outside of my music career has been the learning process and the books. So we're not necessarily talking about earning millions of dollars. We're talking about a society, a concept of the books and the learning helping you elevate towards whatever that is. If it's making millions of dollars, that's fine. Or if it's being happy, or having a better family life, or whatever it is that you're battling with, I think that is the main reason why I launched it, is to help us understand ourselves and understand the world better. And I think that that is probably the most important thing before you go into the entire concept of building companies, being successful, being a successful entrepreneur, or being a successful writer, or an actor, or a musician, or a doctor, or a lawyer. So I want to start this episode, the first episode of our podcast, and we're going to call it Fixing Our Mind, because I think that in order to elevate and take yourself to the next level in life, you have to be able to fix your mind. Fix your mind first is probably the most powerful thing that you can do for yourself, because you're going to realize that no matter at what level you are at with your career, it could be the beginning stages of your entrepreneurship, or deep stages of you learning, earning millions and millions of dollars and building up a massive corporation, you're going to notice that there's a missing void. And in my opinion, that missing void is your mind. And that's what we are going to try to achieve throughout our journey together. And because without fixing that problem, you are always going to be stuck in this weird loop of, being happy and then being unhappy again, being motivated one day and then being unmotivated the next day. And a lot of you guys that are thinking that once the success comes, or once you finally get your dream job or your dream house, or some position that you're after, that all of that is going to go away. But I assure you that it's not, because from my personal experience, that never goes away until you kind of go deep and just really try to understand what the root cause of all of that. And I think that is what we're going to try and tackle. And then the whole concept of the Millionaire Book Society is to basically help you guys elevate your mind. In my case, it was books. I'm more or less obsessed with books and learning and trying to understand life and the world and business and relationships and psychology through some of the smartest minds in the world. So in this particular podcast series, we're going to try and tackle some of that stuff, and then hopefully down the line bring on some guests as well. And it's funny because there's so many different podcasts out there already, and every time somebody starts a new podcast, it's just kind of like, okay, here we go, here's another podcast. There's just so many options nowadays. But I think that the reason why I'm doing this is more for my self-learning and self-improvement, to kind of perfect my personal journey. And I think that if people see it and can reflect on the journey that I'm on, and it helps them in their personal journeys, that's the main key to what I'm doing here. I want to basically try to understand myself and my journey and my life, and hopefully if I can help other people around the world, that would be fantastic, of course. So before we dive into some of the books that I'm reading that are going to be helping us on today's topic of fixing your mind, I just want to give you guys a bit of a background on myself. I'm not going to dive too deep into my personal journey yet. I'm going to probably do a whole episode on that later on, but I just want to kind of get it started, get going on the first episode that I'm going to be uploading on YouTube, for those of you guys to listen, and hopefully it'll help you with your personal challenges and the journey that you are on. So my name is Max Vaneli, and I'm a musician, producer, DJ, professional. Basically, for the last 15 years, I've been touring the world, producing music in the dance music space. So I've been fortunate to play at festivals such as Tomorrowland Main Stage, EDC, and I've had residencies in Ibiza, Spain as well, and I've worked with Tiesto, Swedish House Mafia, many other very prominent musicians. I've done remixes for Lady Gaga, the Gorillaz, Prodigy, and many more. So again, I'm not going to go too deep into my personal music career on this particular podcast, but I just wanted to give you guys a bit of a background. I was originally born in Moldova, in a family of doctors. My entire family pretty much were doctors. And when I was around 12 years old, my family decided to take a leap of faith and move to California to start a new life. Because for those of you that know, Moldova is at one point was one of the poorest countries in Europe. So in order to sort of elevate the next generation of kids in our family, my family decided to move to the US. And it was a very challenging journey because, number one, for those of you that know, if you're a doctor, you have to basically start your residency over. So you have to go to medical school a second time, essentially. And for those of you that have achieved it once, you understand how complicated it is to do it again. So I think early on that was learning lessons in my journey of perseverance and working hard, because it's a very, very challenging thing to do, of course. And my entire family wanted me to get into the medical field, which I happily declined. I was always kind of dabbling in the business world. So I was fortunate to get into UC Santa Barbara and finish my business economics degree there. And I was involved with a couple of startups early on while I was in school, and I actually even took a year off in order to develop those. And my family located to Bay Area, basically, and Bay Area, as you all know, is sort of the hub for startups here in California and probably around the States. So I was surrounded by all of that. I was surrounded by so many people. I personally knew the guy who started WhatsApp also. We would always be having these hangouts at Starbucks, at the local Starbucks scene. So there's always like business happening, ideas flying around. So there was a couple of startups that I was involved with. One of them was purchased for a significant amount, which really helped kind of jumpstart my business career. But when I graduated from UC Santa Barbara, I sort of fell in love with music. I was traveling to Europe during my summers off to visit my family, extended family in Europe, and Europe was filled with dance music at the time. Dance music wasn't as big in the US yet, so I started bringing records back from over there. And when we would do parties at UC Santa Barbara, which is known for a party school, I started bringing some of those records and playing them for my friends, and I sort of fell in love with that culture. And when I graduated, I moved back to the Bay Area and started DJing in San Francisco, which was a pretty big local scene at the time and still is quite a prominent hub in dance music. So that was sort of the beginning of my journey. And even though there was a lot of definitely pushing and pulling when it comes to my career with the people that I was surrounded with, including some early relationships. It's a difficult thing to pursue the music industry, because anybody will say that it's impossible, it's very difficult, and whatnot. And when you're younger and you're kind of in the whole mix of things, I think that it's easier. That's why it's encouraged to dive into startups or doing something insane early on in your career, especially in your early 20s, because when you get older, it becomes more and more challenging. That's where you need to start fixing your mind and trying to, motivate yourself all the time. When you're younger, when you're in your 20s, you're just a bulldozer. You're going right through. You can tackle anything. And as you get older, I don't know if it's your mind just kind of pushing back on the ideas of success. As you get older, it becomes trickier. So you always have to be either, motivating yourself, reading books, learning from others. So that's kind of basically where this whole concept was born in my case, because long story short, I was able to achieve international success through my music But no matter how big I got, there was always something not 100% right. It was either, happiness was not there fully on you, and no amount of money or fame could possibly fix that, which was really strange because I was fortunate to have residencies in Vegas, making significant amount of money in the music industry, and no matter what, there was always something missing. You needed a bigger record, you needed more touring, more money, more fame, and that's what I thought it was. But and then the bigger you got, it just simply would not go away. And searching for answers is sort of like, well, what's wrong with me? And hearing people say, well, what are you complaining about? You have everything. How can you possibly complain about anything when you have everything? And the truth of the matter is, I don't know. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, I agree with you, but I am still going through these problems. And that's when I started reading books and sort of podcast learning or educating myself on different philosophies of things. Because, like, when you're flying high and you're making money and you're just, enjoying your fame, sometimes you kind of lose track of learning and trying to educate yourself, and you just kind of pause that, right? Pause the development. You continue focusing on your music career, but the development of your mind, of your ego, of your life in general, or your inner, I would say, inner soul sort of stops. And the first book that I picked up, post college, of course, there was a lot of books that you read in college, but none of them really relate to this kind of self development, was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That was probably one of the most important books for me early on, because another thing that I realized is that when you are sort of thrown into the world of madness, especially in my case, with all the touring and all the people that I was surrounded by and everybody that I had to work with and learn to build relationships with new agents, managers. It was like having a new girlfriend every week. There was so many people that you had to build relationships with that were potentially important for you in your career. And that was a challenge, because especially if you build up a bit of an ego, like I certainly did, just like many other musicians in my field, where you kind of starting to become a bit more stubborn and focus on your thoughts before you even really care about anybody else's opinions or thoughts, because the only thing that really matters is your personal needs. Your personal needs are the only thing that we really care about. And I think that the biggest lesson that I learned from that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is that no one really cares about your needs. Everybody only cares about their own needs, right? And it was obvious to me, because that's exactly how I felt. I only cared about my needs. So the moment that I started to understand that nobody really gives a damn about your personal needs, in order to achieve success and get what you want, you have to find that balance in relationships. And that's actually something that I picked up from my second favorite book that I'm reading again right now, is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by Covey, Stephen Covey. And basically it's a book that goes through some of those habits, and one of them actually goes in depth about the concept of a win-win relationship, is basically trying to find a balance of both sides. So for example, if I have a need, there's a very it's very important for the relationship to be successful for both sides to have a winning formula, because you can't have, a winning formula for myself and then the other person on the other line is basically losing out, or if I'm losing out and the other person is winning. It's a disbalance that will never work. So that is something that I had to work for myself for a long time, because when greed kicks in, and you're talking about a lot of money and fame and all of that kind of stuff, it gets very dangerous where you are just constantly thinking about your own needs. The only thing you care about is your wins. And that's going to burn you in the long run. Even if you survive that mission where you're constantly getting what you want and you're making millions of dollars and not allowing anybody else get anything in return, you're going to mentally burn out. I promise you that. And you're going to start questioning yourself tremendously. And that is the main reason why it's really important to not sweep all of that kind of stuff under the rug. You need to face yourself. You need to face your demons. A lot of times the reason why we live in fear, or we're constantly agitated, or anxiety kicks in, a lot of the times is just simple basic things that you are doing that need to be fixed. Sometimes worrying about, oh, my business partner is going to screw me over. But then if you look at the books, you've actually been the one screwing him over all these years. And that gives you anxiety and fear that he's going to find out and basically try to make things even, or take things back in his own court, and take advantage. And that's not a good way to live life at all, honestly. And so that is one of the main things that I'm actually trying to tackle myself. So a quick story, which is kind of interesting, where it helped me tremendously with the book of How to Win Friends and Influence People. I've learned how to build relationships as I travel internationally, build better relationships. And I was once in a random studio session talking to some musicians, and there was a guy just sitting there, and I thought it was a friend of someone, just sitting in the back, listening to our conversation, watching the session. And he basically asks me randomly, he's like, hey, have you ever thought about doing a TED Talk? And I was like, well, I never thought about doing a TED Talk, definitely. I wasn't even thinking about that space at all. And he's like, you should do a TED Talk because of I guess, the way we were communicating with that particular musician at the time. We were just going deep into the conversation of life and all of that stuff. So I was fortunate to do a TED Talk. That was kind of like the beginning of my, I guess, philosophical journey, or however you want to call it, in the world of learning and changing my mindset and whatnot. And the topic was, it was spaces basically, and it was just on relationships and things like that, which was perfect because my main topic that I wanted to discuss during my TED Talk was exactly that. It was building relationships and how important those relationships are, even with your neighbor. Even if you, it's quite common in America for neighbors not to know each other. I was born into a bit of a different format where, I'm accustomed to borrowing eggs, or if you need sugar or whatnot, kind of like an old school approach. Now I'm actually living in the Dominican Republic, where I relocated to the Dominican Republic a couple of years ago. where I find it a bit more like that, a more old school approach of helping your neighbor. The relationships are much easier with the people that are living next to you, even though obviously on the financial side of things, America is definitely one of the most powerful countries in the world, which is a really interesting thing that I will definitely tackle down the line. How is it possible that countries with less money, you see cleaning ladies jumping around, dancing around during work hours over there, and everybody's happy. It's quite an interesting topic that I would love to discuss. But in today's episode, I want to address the fix your mind first concept. And I just picked up a book by Joseph Nguyen. And you probably, maybe some of you have heard of it. Don't believe everything you think. Basically, it's one of my favorite books right now. I highly advise that you pick this up. And it basically really talks about your mind and how your mind is constantly playing tricks on you. It's probably one of the most fascinating topics of how we sort of have to suffer through many things that never really happen. There's a famous quote from, I believe it's from Mark Twain, if I'm not wrong. And he says that majority of our suffering comes from things that never happen. And I think that is a brilliant, brilliant quote. And in this particular book, Don't Believe Everything You Think, there's a segment where they're talking about that every single thing that happens in life is like a double arrow. So there's a double arrow that's flying out in your direction. One of them is a physical, the one that's actually going to hurt you. It could be a car accident or bad news of some sort. And the second one is basically the thought process of the event, right? So majority of the time, we are going to suffer from certain things, right? When things happen. But it's kind of like I guess it's a concept of double suffering, where why would you suffer twice, right? Especially if you're expecting bad news, and if the bad news will come eventually, you're going to suffer from that bad news tremendously regardless. But if the bad news doesn't come, your mind still suffered because of the thought process. And that is absolutely horrendous to live with, right? It's waking up every day in the morning before you even go to the office. You're already starting to think about all the crazy stuff that's happening in your life. Bills, taxes, your mortgage is due. What if I get fired? What if something happens with my car and I have to repair it? What if this happens? We're living in a constant fear. Like, for example, every time I go in the studio, try to make music, you have no idea how many times I go in the studio and the first thought that enters my mind is that I'm going to make something shitty, right? That is like probably the worst way to, start a session or start a business. Imagine if every time you want to start a business or you're starting a new business and you get in the room with people that you're trying to start the business with, and they're eager and excited and motivated to make this work, and you are sitting there and in the back of your mind you are questioning every move and you're thinking, okay, this is horrible, like this is not going to work out, the people that I'm working with are not great, they are basically just nothing will work out, just being absolutely super negative about everything that you do. It's impossible to be successful without fixing your mind first. It is absolutely impossible. If you are going into a battle and your mind is not fixed, you will not win. There's an interesting interview that I saw. I think LeBron James was talking about it, the basketball player, where basically he learned it from Michael Jordan. When Michael Jordan would jump for that winning basket, a three-pointer with a couple of seconds left, before he lets go of the ball, in his mind, it's already going in. It's going through the net. He can hear it. He can visualize it. He can close his eyes and literally hear it go right through like a water drip, right through the net. And unfortunately, not every single basketball player can do that. Majority of the time, a lot of basketball players or golfers or in any kind of sport or business, when they go for that jump shot, in their mind, they're thinking they're going to hit the rim. They're going to miss. And that throws you off. Is it energy? Is it universal energy? Is it something to do with your muscle reflexes? Because I think that your mind and body are connected. They're as one. So if your mind is because your mind doesn't know what is right or what is wrong. Like, for example, if you tell your mind that you're going to miss the shot, maybe your mind is telling your body that that's what we need to do, is miss the shot, because sometimes you need to do it like that. Your mind doesn't know that it needs to go through the hole, right? It might think that we're playing a game of hit the rim. So if your mind is on that frequency, you are simply not gonna be successful. And the reason why so much stuff is happening in our head all the time nowadays is because of all this craziness that's happening out externally. We have the social media, we have the news, we have all this stuff scrolling up and down and checking other people's success. And again, going back to the news and hearing all this negative stuff and the wars and the politics and all of that stuff. That is immensely having conflicting and having a very, very negative effect on your progress in whatever you do. You could be the greatest businessman in the world, but if you don't know how to block that noise, you are going to suffer. And then you're going to start doubting yourself. If you sit there on Instagram scrolling, if you're like in the music industry like I am, you have no idea how many times I'm looking through other people's pages and I'm looking at all of this success that's happening. And no matter what level of success that I'm at, I'm still thinking, okay, my success is nothing compared to that. I wish I had this, okay? I wish I had a Grammy. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. That comparison syndrome really messes your mind up. And another thing that I was thinking about the other day is, think about the greatest businessman you could think of, or the greatest athlete that you could think of in your mind. In his opinion, there's always going to be someone better than him in his mind. I guarantee you that. I promise you that every single person, you take any actor, you take someone like Denzel Washington or someone, Daniel Day-Lewis, someone great. I promise you that there's somebody else that they look up to. And some of the most successful artists in the world, they might be looking at their success and say, I'm a nobody, I'm a sellout. I'm not like, the Rolling Stones. I'm not as underground as this artist or that artist. I achieved all this success, but I wish I was more credible in this or that, right? And then an underground artist might be looking at it from the perspective of like, oh, I wish I had that mainstream success. So it's a never-ending mind game that is going to be just messing with you all the time. which is the reason why it is so important to focus on fixing your mind before you do anything. Honestly, if you wake up in the morning and you're an absolute just mess in terms of mentally, the worst thing that you could do is try to launch some kind of a business. A lot of people say it's like, oh, just keep your mind busy. I understand that keeping your mind busy is extremely important, and it's probably the quickest fix in order to kind of snap out of it and try to get your mind into things so you can start kind of working towards your goals or whatever that you're working on, either a big project or a business or whatever it is. But I think the first thing that you need to do is start to understand your mind. And the best way to fix your mind is to turn off all the noise. You have to turn off all the noise. You have to get away from social media. You have to get away from distractions. And you have to simply let yourself be in this moment of Zen, of absolute quiet. If you are not able to do that at your own house, you can go to a park and just, I recommend listening to some music. I'm a huge jazz fan, even though I make dance music, which is pretty funny. But just mellow your brain and mellow out your mind a bit, and then just read. Start reading something, something easy. You don't have to dive into some crazy books. Like, I personally think that Don't Believe Everything You Think is a very easy read. And if you're not a reader, you can listen to ebooks, audiobooks. You can listen to books on YouTube. I'm pretty sure I've seen some things. I personally like to indulge in reading and just holding physical books. I'm kind of obsessed with that. I'm a kind of like a book collector at this point. And just let your mind drift a bit. And I actually did a bit of a homework assignment to help myself get in the zone, get in the game whenever I'm feeling weird and I can't get myself going. And I've been just trying to find some answers. So I've been doing a lot of reading and researching, and I came up with a bit of a sort of like a list of things that I wanted to kind of go over and get you guys going. So I'm going to go through this list that I literally have in my studio 24/7 at this point, and it's going to really help out, I think. So number one is consciously lower the bar. And I know it sounds horrible if you're one of those killers that likes to go in and be a perfectionist, but that is going to immensely help you, because being the perfectionist is sometimes the ass kicker, where you are such a perfectionist, you can't even start anything. You can't write a sentence if you're a book writer. You can't, focus on a script, or you can't do a song, or you can't do a business draft or anything like that. So basically, with the mindset of done is better than perfect, give yourself permission to be creative, create rough and creative, be messy, improvise. It's going to help you become, a kid again, where you are just laying out your ideas and having fun, and not overwhelm yourself so much with the finished product, which is going to kick your butt. Number two is use the 80-20 rule. Focus on the 20% of effort that gets you 80% of results. This sort of trims the fat and focuses on clarity. It's kind of like it's just like that raw stuff that you need to lay down. And the best example I can give you is, if you ask any Metallica fan, they will tell you that their first few albums were the best. Same thing goes with Nirvana, for example. And the reason why is because they were so raw. And the funny thing is that the more money they got, the cleaner their sound became, and it kind of went the other way, right? The fans didn't necessarily want that. So put yourself in that mindset of 80-20. Lay it down, make it dirty, make it raw. You can clean it up later, but just lay it down, get things going, right? Number 3 is build in micro wins. So what I mean by that is set a timer for 10 minutes and just begin. No pressure to finish, just start. Set a timer, tell yourself, I'm going to do this for 10 minutes. This short burst is going to kickstart momentum for you. You know, it's going to do something. If you're working on a project, put a timer and just do it like that. I'm actually in the process of writing a book, The Power of Chipping Away, and I will address that more. So in my case, for example, I would get enormously overwhelmed when I'm making music, especially if I look at the time and now I'm sitting on the project for 2-3 hours and nothing is really working out. That's really starting to kick my butt. So what I started doing now is when I'm laying down my ideas, if I'm being creative, I set a timer for myself for 30 seconds. And 30 seconds are up, I got to bounce the idea and I got to throw it in the folder. And then I check it the next day or the following day. I make a bunch of ideas and then I make decisions if they're good or not. I actually borrowed this from Skrillex and Fred again. They do that a lot. They're quite famous musicians in my space. And I think it keeps things moving, because if you're working on an idea and you're just sitting there and working it, and then it ends up being something that you don't really love, you're just frustrated because you killed the entire day, and then your ears get stale. Your brain is kind of mush at this point. That's why it's best to lay it down, leave it, come back to it later, especially if you're a writer as well. Write it, leave it, come back to it, perfect it. You can make a decision later if it's good, but don't kill yourself trying to perfect it the same day. It's going to really play mind tricks on you. The next one is going to be separate must-haves from nice-to-haves. What that means is prioritize, make a list. I promise you, instead of having 10 things to do every single day, shave them to 3 things. And you might say to yourself, well, then I have all this time left over. Yeah, but if you have 10 things, you're never going to get any of that done. And even if you do finish all of them, it's going to be all half-assed. So it's better to have 3 tasks. You do those 3 tasks, and then you're done. Polish them, make them nice, make them good, make them beautiful. And imagine if you wake up in the morning and the only thing that you had to do that particular day is one task. Is it a social media post? Is it a paragraph for your book? Is it a script that you need to read or write? Is it something that you need to record for your podcast? Just that one thing. Some people separate them on the daily. Monday we do this, Tuesday we do this. Think of it like exercise. Imagine if every day you went to the gym, you had to do your entire body. Shoulders, legs, chest. There's a reason why we separate things, is because we want to be more efficient. If you are forced to do too much every day, you are going to burn out and your mind is going to just quit on you, and it's not going to work. Okay. The next and the final thing that I would like to discuss is number 5, which is create a ritual for imperfect output. I really love this one. Create a ritual for an imperfect output. And what I mean by that is, make something raw, post something raw, share a draft, launch some version number 1. This trains your brain to tolerate imperfection, because a lot of times, especially if you're a musician, we sit there and dwell on ideas, and some of them are never even showcased. So if you're overwhelmed about finishing a project, maybe it's time for you to put it together and share it to the world. Post a snippet online just for the hell of it. If you're a writer, post something. Or if you have a thought about something, just do it. Just grab your whatever tools that you are using for your art, or if you're a software engineer and you want to do some kind of a code, just do it. One small piece of that journey is a lot better than trying to sit there and perfect the entire framework for it to be finalized. That's just gonna be you're going to kill yourself with that. And then a bonus a bonus thing that I would throw in is embrace failure. Embrace failure is the bonus one, because every mistake is like a reference point. Treat your work like a prototype, not a final product. You're not failing, you're just refining it. You are simply refining it. You might even, if you're working on a book, you can chip away for years. I know that a lot of people kind of put on their boxing gloves and say to themselves, okay, it's time to go in and kick some ass. I'm gonna knock this book out of the park in 1 week. I think it's important to set deadlines for yourself, but I think deadlines need to be set when it comes to the final stages of your product. Rick Rubin talks about that a lot, famous music producer. And don't set deadlines for yourself until you are ready to commit to that deadline. I think it's very important, because you need to learn where the creative process stops before you set that deadline for yourself. And then once you set that deadline for yourself, then you stick with the deadline, because that's the other thing, that your mind might never let go of the work, right? So you need to learn what phase you are at. So that's really important. And I think that if you simply start treating your projects, your life, and your hobbies, or your career, whatever that is that you're trying to focus on right now that is really throwing you off mentally, these are some of the things that you need to focus on in order to achieve your tasks. You have to simply chip away at things, because it becomes enormously overwhelming when you look at the entire project and you say to yourself, oh my God. Think about it this way. I'm going to leave you guys with this final thought, and I think it's going to help. When you're trying to climb Mount Everest, I don't think it's a good idea for you to stand back and look at it from a far distance and look at the peak and lose your mind. If you get really close to the edge of the mountain and you simply start climbing, you don't really know where the end result is, which makes things a lot easier, which is the reason why it is so enormously harder to be successful a second time, be it in a musician or a business. And I know a lot of people say, well, you're coming in with a lot of knowledge. But the thing is, like, if you know the road ahead and you know how complicated it is, it becomes tremendously more difficult because of your mindset. So if you can eliminate that mindset by zooming in and not zooming out sometimes, they say in investment, you got to zoom out. That's a really smart strategy because everybody's looking at every single up and down. But when you are working on a business, you got to zoom in. If you're working in life or a relationship or whatever that is, you have to zoom in as far in as possible so you simply see your next tree, your next step, your next road. You're not looking at it, you're like, okay, this is going to take me forever. I will probably die trying. You will never know because your mind is kind of weird like that. When you're walking and you're not really seeing the end, your mind sometimes is quite positive if you think about it. It's constantly telling you, oh, it's coming, right? But if you're reading a book, for example, and you're looking at the volume and it has 1,000 pages and you're on page 20, all your mind can think about is the remaining 980 pages that you have to read, right? But imagine if your book doesn't have any page numbers. and you don't know the thickness of the book. You're just reading it one page at a time. You're embracing one page at a time. I think that is the trick, is to embrace one page at a time without worrying the final result. The final result will take care of itself. But if you simply focus at that one page at a time, it's really going to make a tremendous difference. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this first episode. I have no idea how I did. This is my first podcast ever. And in this case, I'm simply talking to myself. And hopefully I will get better and better at these. So please do let me know in the comment section what you think and maybe some of the topics that you would like to discuss as we evolve and progress in our journey of our podcast and the Millionaire Book Society. And hopefully you guys are gonna jump on the journey with me, and hopefully the things that we discuss here are going to tremendously help with your personal journey as well.